So we're starting with our Clicker app. Clicker app is here. It's basically building whether or not you agree or disagree with the question. There's two versions of the app. The student version, which we're building first, and the teacher version, which runs and can update the do you agree or disagree question up at the top. So CloudDB is a non-visible component. It's experimental, may not work all the time. This project has already been built. The user interface is there. Click this template app to get started. Then in App Inventor, they say rename this project, save project as CloudDB. Instead of template and copy, I'm going to type in student. Clicker CloudDB student. And I'll add the _3 for period 3. We're going to say OK. So this should update. Here we'll run through what's in the user interface, the screen, label question, a table arrangement that has a spacer, a label for agree, a label for disagree, a slider for agree, a slider for disagree, a button for agree with thumbs up as the media, a button for disagree with thumbs down as the media, and then a reset button. There are no blocks programmed. Get out of here. There are no blocks programmed yet. We are to add two non-visible components. Notifier 1, and we are to add from the experimental tray CloudDB1. Because they're the only ones that we're using, we're not changing any of the settings. We're going to use the default settings for the notifier. We're going to use the default settings for CloudDB. Later on, we may end up coming up with our own tokens and our own port settings for these and project IDs, but we'll get to that as we move along. In the blocks side of things, scrolling through, we just added these two things, the default settings. They're going to have us start coding the app. We're adding two global variables, agree count and disagree count, starting values of 0. So variables, initialize, agree count, camel case there, so capital C, get my 0 math block, and then I'm just going to duplicate this and then rename it to disagree count. So there's our two global variables initialized. What do they ask us to do next? So when a user presses the thumbs up or thumbs down buttons, we want to add one to the appropriate variable and store it in the database. The reset button sets the variables back to 0 and stores them in the database. The reset button is mostly used for debugging purposes, since the real version of the Clicker app would not likely offer this features to students. However, later on as an enhancement, we'll build the teacher version of the app. For that enhancement, the reset button will become functionally important for the teacher to use. So, create two new procedures, get DB values and store DB values. We're going to call get DB values when screen initializes, and when we click button agree, we'll add one to the agree count and store the DB values. Click button disagree, add one to the agree count and store DB values, and then our reset button is going to set them back to 0 and store the DB values. So I'm going to go ahead and build these 4 event handlers now, and then we'll build what's in the procedures afterwards. So I'll start off with the 2 blank procedures. This is store, what do we say? I already forgot. I'm sorry, get DB values and store DB values. Store DB values and get DB values. So there's my 2 procedures. Now I can go through and do screen initialize. We're going to call the procedure to get DB values. And now we need button agree when click. Duplicate that and then make it the disagree. Duplicate it again and make it the reset. So when button agree is there, this we're going to do a lot of copying and pasting and then just updating. We're going to say set the agree count to agree count plus 1. So I can duplicate this and have it over on the disagree one, but update it to be disagree and disagree. Then we also need to call the store DB values procedure. And store DB values procedure. I'm going to duplicate this to put it down here. Duplicate the store DB values. This one, when we reset it, we're just going to reset it to 0. And this one, we'll change it from agree count to disagree count. This block is extra, so I'm going to delete it. And I'm pretty sure we just made the event handlers, all 4 of them, exactly as we needed. Agree, disagree, set to 0. Store DB values, add 1. Store DB values, add 1. All right. So we just did the summary of the event handlers. Now we need screen when initializes. What's going to happen on get DB values? Well, we're going to call cloud DB1 get value and the tag agree. If there's no value there, get a 0. Get value from the tag disagree. If there's no value there, get a 0. So over here, we're going to find our cloud DB get value. We need 2 of these in the get values block. The tags we're using are agree and disagree. So that's for my text area. Agree is the first tag, and I'm just going to keep things in order. Disagree is the second tag. Value if not there, I need a couple of zeros. And that's there when screen initializes. So I'm just kind of moving this here to see that that's happening together. Now, when we store the DB values, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to send it the agree count variables and the disagree count variables. And they do say, note that the tag is case sensitive and must exactly match the get value and store value. So as we're doing the tags lowercase, and these ones keep track of the voting. We may change it later as needed. So now it's going to be a call from the DB, and this is going to be store value. The value I'm looking to store first is the agree count in the agree tag. I really just want to make a Greedo joke here. You know who agreed first? Han agreed first. Does anybody get that? Yes. You get that? Good job, Brandon. I said we're doing so many agrees and disagrees. I want to make a Greedo joke. Greedo, Greedo, the green guy from Star Wars that Han shot first. So Han agreed first. But now I had to explain it, so it's not as fun.
I don't watch Star Wars.
I never saw Star Trek. Yeah, me neither. Now, asynchronous versus synchronous retrieval. So, CloudDB get value versus a TinyDB get value. CloudDB get value is going to be happening not immediately. Statement versus an expression block. So the CloudDB statement, whereas the TinyDB get value is expression because it can happen immediately. So TinyDB is synchronous retrieval, meaning that the moment that you ask for it, it's there. However, the retrieval over the web that way is impossible. So we do asynchronous retrieval that's not happening at the same time. So things could go wrong here. We end up with an input-output problem.
I have an email from this day.
Okay. I'll go get it afterwards. So the input-output problems, because of this, we can't wait for the data to be received. Instead, when the device receives the requested data, we're going to trigger an event that will notify the app. So got value and data changed events. So here's what we're going to do. So first initialize, what do they have us do? Got value, data changed event handler. We have it there. they're going to build a procedure, got data with tag and value as their parameters. So we're doing another new procedure. I'm going to move down here in my workspace. Where did I get the what? The CloudDB, did you add your non-visible component? CloudDB I got from the non-visible component on the designer side. If you miss it, you got to go back and add it. So this is got data. Can I put a question mark in a procedure? That's actually, let's see if it does it. It's like that old got milk ad, got data. Oh no. And then we're going to add 2 inputs on here. Tag and value. It doesn't like it when I rename it there. It has to be renamed here. Tag, value. All right, so tag and value are there. What are they going to have us do with that? Then we have when CloudDB1 got value, we're going to call the got data procedure, and we're going to pass it the tag and the value that we get. And then data changed, same thing, got data. So these are the 2 procedures that are going with there. We haven't built anything in there yet. So CloudDB should have a got value, and CloudDB should have a data changed event handler. Got value, data changed. Okay, so we're going to call the got data procedure. I still don't know if that question mark is going to make an error, but we'll find out. We're going to pass it the tag that the CloudDB passes it, and then I can just duplicate this part here and drop it in here, and those local parameters work. All right, so now I've got my, when we got a value, it's going to call this got data thing here, but now we got to build what goes inside here. So let's see what they have us doing next. So the got data procedure figures out which query was answered, i.e. which tag has been requested. So there's going to be, if and else statement that goes through and decides. So if the tag is agree, set the agree count to the value that was just passed. If it's not a number, then set it to 0. Because if it's not a number, we got the data and there was nothing there stored. We need to start the data at 0. Then we're going to do the same thing for disagree. And we're going to update the disagree variables. And then we're going to call this update display procedure, which we haven't built yet. So we'll get there. So now inside here, we're going to say, we only have to do this once and we can just duplicate it. If tag equals agree. So if the tag that we're getting is equal to the string agree, then what are we doing? Then we are going to set agree to the value, and if it's not a number, set it to 0. So variables, we're going to do set agree to the value, and then do we check the value, or do we check we check value if value is not a number. So we need another if statement. If it's not a number, then we're going to set this to 0. I'm kind of not liking this. I'm thinking this might cause issues where we set it to whatever value is stored there by accident. So got value. If the value is not a number, set it to 0. What if we did this like this? We had an else statement here. I think this would be a safer choice. If it's not a number, it's 0. Otherwise, give it the value. Duplicate this whole thing. And then this is for disagree, and disagree, and disagree. And then call update display, which we haven't built yet. So procedures, we're going to make a new procedure. Call update, actually no, it's just update display. Because then we can go and call the update display procedure at the end of both of those. All right, so what are they going to have us do in update display? So in update display, they have us agree label text to agree plus the variable. Don't forget your space and your colon in there. And then update both of them. So for update display here, it's going to be label agree, set label text to a join.